Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Lowe. I'm the Director of Agent Partnerships at Picasso. Thank you for joining our session today. Thank you for inviting us. We're very, very happy to be here. Quick housekeeping notes. We have the chat session open on the side displaying here. So if you have questions along the presentation here today, please enter them into the chat session there, and I will grab those and I will send them over to Austin at the end. If you have questions that you don't want to put in the chat and you want to just email them to me directly, please do so. My email address is chris, C-H-R-I-S, at picasso.com, C-H-R-I-S at picasso.com. So please feel free to put questions in the chat session or email me directly, and Austin and I will get to those questions at the end. Without further ado, please let me welcome Austin Allison, co-founder and CEO of Picasso.
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I'm a huge fan of Hilton Head, your market, and also want to thank Dan Prudhomme for the opportunity to be here. As Chris mentioned, I'm Austin Allison, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Picasso. Quick intro on myself to provide some context and background. Like many of you in the room, I'm a longtime real estate guy. I started selling real estate when I was 18 years old in Cincinnati, Ohio. I sold pretty much all through college into law school when I created a company called dotloop. Hopefully we have some dotloop customers in the room. If so, thank you for your support. But had an amazing run at dotloop. We built that business over about 7 years until we became part of Zillow about 5 years ago. I stayed on at Zillow for a few years, then left a couple years ago, took a little bit of time off to brew up the next idea, and Picasso is the byproduct of that. So I'm really pleased to be joined at Picasso by an amazing team. So Chris Lowe obviously is on our team as Director of Sales. My co-founder is Spencer Rascoff, who some of you may know as former CEO of Zillow. And then there's a team of about 25 of us, most of whom came from my last company, dotloop, and or Zillow. So we've all been around the real estate industry for a long time. Many of us are former realtors and really passionate about this space and the opportunity to partner with each of you. So let me jump into Picasso. Picasso has a very simple mission, which is to enrich lives by making second home ownership possible and enjoyable for more people. So basically what that means is we want to make the dream of second home ownership available to more people. And this is a dream for me that started about 7 years ago when my wife, Angela, and I had an opportunity to become second homeowners. We never grew up with a second home, but we had always dreamed of having one. And about 7 years ago, we stretched and made it happen in Lake Tahoe. And we'll never forget that first evening when we were sitting in front of the fireplace in this empty house, just thinking about how appreciative we were for the opportunity to be a second homeowner. And from that point forward, it really enabled this, what we would describe as a more enriched life. We built memories in Lake Tahoe. We became friends with the neighbors. We became part of the local community. It really did enrich our lives. And from that moment forward, I always wanted to find a way to make second home ownership possible for more people, because today it's quite out of reach. Second homes are really a privilege today that's limited to the top 1%. And we don't think it should be that way. We think that second home ownership should be enjoyed by the top 15 or 20% of the world. And that's why Picasso exists, to make this dream possible for more people in partnership with each of you. So to just talk about why this problem exists, there's really two main reasons why second home ownership is so out of reach. And it can all be summed up into the term underutilization, meaning most second homes, if they're not rented out, they sit vacant for 10 to 11 months a year, because most second homeowners only use their home 5 or 6 weeks a year. Meanwhile, there's millions and millions, actually tens of millions of families who aspire to own second homes, but they're unable to, usually due to reasons of cost or in some cases hassle. Meaning it may be a buyer who can't afford a second home at all, It could, or maybe it's a buyer that could afford a second home, but maybe not the second home of their dream. So maybe they've got $1 million budget, but what they really want is a $4 million home in Sea Pines, for example. Or maybe it's a second homeowner that could afford a whole second home, but just can't get their mind around owning 100% of something that they're only going to use 10 or 15% of the time. Those are the types of people that Pacaso was really created for, to create a better way to own a second home. The second issue associated with second home ownership, in addition to cost, is the hassle. It's very difficult. I mean, it's difficult enough to manage a primary home. Then you take that home and move it into a secondary market where you don't live on a primary basis. It becomes even more difficult to manage. And then many second homeowners would prefer to not be in the business of being a short-term rental landlord. So renting out the home and having renters tear through the property every weekend is also not interesting to a lot of second homeowners. So that's really why we created this company, was to solve that problem through co-ownership. So the first thing that I want to address is a question that comes up oftentimes, which is, so you guys are enabling people to buy shares of second homes. How is that different than a timeshare? And the answer is, it's very different than a resort timeshare. And I'll talk about a couple of the big differences right now. So the first big difference is that this is true ownership. When somebody buys a Pacaso, what they're buying is a share of an LLC which owns a home. So collectively, the owners, the 6 or 8, a maximum of 8 owners that own these properties, own 100% of the home. They control the home. They can even go as far as to removing Pacaso as the asset manager if they wish. So it truly is 100% true ownership. It's analogous to if Chris and I were to go buy a house together in Hilton Head, and we were to form our own LLC and find a home and work with Dan or one of you as our buyer's agent to buy the house. And then we own the property and kind of share the calendar from that point forward. It's analogous to that experience where the ownership is 100% true ownership. That's very different than a resort timeshare, which is often a right to use, where when you buy into the Marriott Vacation Club or whatever timeshare you're buying into, you're generally paying for the right to use a specific type of hotel room for a period of time in a given year. So this is just true real estate ownership, structured as an LLC, which is a very common ownership structure. There's probably 15 to 20%, if not more, of the homes in Hilton Head are owned in an LLC. This structure is no different. Second big difference is that these are single family homes. So these are not hotels, or these are not resort products. These are not apartments. These are true single family homes that can only otherwise be purchased as a whole home. And then the third big difference is that Pacasos are very easy to resell because we work with real estate agents and there are no restrictions. Whereas, well, there is one restriction, which is that you have to hold the share for a year. But other than that restriction, it transacts just like real estate. So when you try to sell a timeshare, there's a lot of problems with selling a timeshare that make them very difficult to resell. One of the problems is that it tends to be controlled by the developer, so it doesn't transact like normal real estate. And there's also an abundance of supply and a shortage of demand for that product. In this case, it's very limited supply because these are unique single family homes. And we work with great real estate agents, just like each of you, syndicate through the MLS, which publishes to all of your websites and wherever else you want it to go, be that Redfin, Realtor.com, or Zillow. So those are the big differences in LLC co-ownership and a resort timeshare. The better way to think about this concept is how it compares to whole home ownership, because that really is the only true alternative. If you want to go buy a $4 million unique single family home in Sea Pines, and I'm using that example because we have a beautiful home, beautiful Pacaso available in Sea Pines right now. The only way to go do that is to go pay $4 million for the home that you're only going to use in most cases 5 to 6 weeks a year. With Pacaso, you can buy a share of that $4 million home for $500,000 and basically right-size your ownership, save money on both the initial purchase as well as the ongoing cost, and benefit from the hassle-free nature of our professionally managed LLC. So it's a really, really great alternative to whole home ownership. And frankly, it makes a lot more sense than owning 100% of something that you're only going to use 10 or 15% of the time. So the next thing I want to talk about is how we work with our real estate agent partners. So our primary business is about helping people co-own homes together. We put together the LLC. We have an operating agreement that's state-of-the-art that addresses all the co-ownership use cases in scenarios that may play out. We provide software that enables the co-owners to share the calendar, and we manage every aspect associated with the home, from coordinating the vendors to come in and repair the furnace when it breaks, all the way through to paying the bills and generating K1 at the end of each year for each owner. So it truly is a hassle-free ownership experience that we provide kind of end to end. Well, in order for people to buy Picassos, they work through real estate agents, and that's where each of you come in. So we work with real estate agents on both the buy and the listing side of every single transaction. And the things that our real estate agent partners are really loving most about Picasso is obviously the opportunity to earn more cash. I mean, who doesn't want to grow their business, even in a really great and vibrant real estate climate that we're in right now? Most people are interested in growing their business. Picasso can help. But the other thing that people really like is that it's purely additive, meaning it complements your core business. It does not compete with it or cannibalize it in any way, shape, or form. And let me talk you through how that works. So imagine if you're a $500,000 buyer that wants to own in Sea Pine, and you want a nice house in Sea Pine, a house that would otherwise go for, $3 to $5 million. If you're a $500,000 buyer, you're probably not going to convert into a whole $4 million home in Sea Pines right now, because there's just no inventory. That budget is not going to get you what you want in that particular submarket. With Picasso, you can convert those types of buyers who would otherwise be window shoppers into homeowners by bringing them in as a Picasso co-owner. So basically the way that works is any clients that you have that are interested in owning a second home, you can bring Picasso into that conversation, and we can help to upsize their purchase. So they could either, that $500,000 buyer could buy into the $4 million home and own 1/8 of it that I mentioned, or it may even be a $500,000 buyer that wants to use the home more often than a typical second homeowner. But again, they need $1 million to get the home that they want. In that scenario, we could take the $500,000 buyer and convert them to a $1 million buyer by enabling them to own 50% of the home. So there's a variety of different scenarios ranging from 12.5% ownership to 50% ownership that will empower you to convert more of your buyer prospects into homeowners, or second homeowners for that matter. The second thing is on the listing side. So I'm sure there are many past clients in your database who own second homes that fit into that bucket that I described earlier of a second homeowner who owns 100%, but only uses the home, say 10 or 15% of the time. But maybe they don't want to sell the whole home because they love the home, right? As a second homeowner, when you survey second homeowners, we find consistently that most of them love their home. They love owning a second home, but they hate the fact that they underutilize it. And in the case of people who rent the home out to help pay their bills, they hate the fact that they have to rent the home out because it's a huge hassle and renters tear up the property. In Picasso's scenario, Picasso now has a new option that you can offer to your clients, which we call a sell down, which empowers your sellers to right-size their ownership and sell down a portion of their home. So let's say you own a $4 million home and you have a $2 million mortgage on it, and it just sits vacant for most of the year. With Picasso, you could sell 75% of that home, take $3 million off the table, pay off your mortgage with $2 million of it, reduce your operating expenses by 75%, and eliminate all the hassle because Picasso is a professionally managed LLC. That's a solution that was never available before, and there's almost every second homeowner fits into this bucket of somebody who owns the home and loves it, but wishes they didn't have to own 100% of it. So it's a really great option in the way for you to win more listings in an environment where listings, as everybody on this call knows, are hard to come by, right? Because inventory is constrained. So there's a lot of latent inventory out there of these sellers who would be very interested in selling down a portion of their home, and we can now help them with that. In terms of how the numbers work, we pay full commission, at a minimum. In some cases, we pay more than full commission. So the scenario on the screen here is walking you through this, what we call a lead buyer. So if you this is the most lucrative type of Pacaso transaction. They're all very lucrative, but this is the most lucrative. So if you have a buyer or if you bring one or more buyers that represent 50% of a home. So to use the most simple example, let's say that you have $1 million buyer that wants to buy a $2 million home. You can bring in Pacaso. Think of us like a mortgage company almost, where you bring us in to kind of up level the buying power of this buyer. You bring in Pacaso and we'll empower that $1 million buyer to buy a $2 million home by converting them into a 50% Pacaso owner. Instead of getting paid on just the $1 million that you would have been paid on before, you're going to get paid on the first $1 million that you brought to the table, the second $1 million that Pacaso purchases, because Pacaso will purchase the other half of the home so that we can hold it for a period of 30 to 60 days to resell the remaining half. And then we will also relist the home with you as our ambassador partner agent. So you'll get paid 3 times. So it's like converting $1 million of volume into $3 million of volume. So agents really love that with the lead buyer program. But even without the lead buyer, whether you're just bringing obviously if you bring a seller to Pacaso that's selling all or a portion of their home, you earn full commission on that. But also if you bring buyers, we pay a full 3%. So even if the co-op transaction is only offering 2.5%, for example, we pay out of our own pocket to make up the difference to ensure that you're getting 3%. The other thing to note is that it is very easy. So Chris and a team of people that he works with are there to support all of our agent partnerships. So in all of these sales conversations, you handle the real estate side. So you're handling the paperwork and any conversations related to the real estate or the market, but we handle all of the new conversations about the Pacaso co-ownership model, like how does scheduling work? How does the LLC work? And many more. Some of these questions, hopefully we'll get to at the end of the conversation here. So our plan is to work with everybody, but obviously, we want to work with the best agents in the business. So, but regardless of how much volume you do, whether you do, 500 million a year or 500,000 a year, Pacaso is open to partnering with you and very interested in partnering with each of you, because our belief is that together we can fulfill the mission and empower more people to enjoy the dream of second home ownership with much less cost and hassle. So we're currently live in about 25 markets. We just announced Pacaso on October 1st, so it's been 2 or 3 weeks now. Prior to that, though, we had been piloting the concept in beta for 4 or 5 months. So we had been operating under a separate brand just to get the product right, get the messaging right, build out the software that'll enable things like the schedule to be shared. And then we went live in several more markets on October 1st. So Hilton Head is one of those markets. So we would love to partner with each of you, but whether it's Hilton Head or if you have buyers that are interested in other markets that you'd like to refer out, we can also pay referral fees on anything that's referred out of your market as well. So that's kind of the overview of the market territory. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about here is just what we're looking for in the listings. So basically, we're looking for listings that we describe internally on a scale of 1 to 10. If 10 is the most luxury and 1 is the least luxury, we're looking for listings that are like luxury level 7, which basically means they're luxury. Most people would look at the home and say, wow, this is definitely luxury, but not so luxury that it's out of reach. Like we're not putting $50 million homes on Pacaso, for example. But I would say as a general rule, what we're finding the sweet spot to be is somewhere between 2 and 3 times the median average price point in a particular zip code as our sweet spot. And we're also looking for homes that are turnkey and ready to go. They have to be beautiful. We're not taking on, construction projects at this point in time. It has to be turnkey and ready to go, 2 to 3 times the median price of the market, and it has to have locally relevant amenities. So, in your market, it probably needs to have a pool unless it's right on the beach. But whatever those amenities are that are locally relevant to buyers who are looking for second homes, it's also important that Pacaso has those things in each of its properties as well. So that concludes my presentation. What we wanted to do next is open it up for Q&A, but I'm going to touch on the 4 or 5 most typical questions that we get. And I suspect many of these questions may already be in the Q&A thread. And as a reminder, please insert any questions that you have in the Q&A app. And Chris, who's on the call with me, will be fielding those questions after I run through these first 5. So first, can owners rent out their time? No. Pacaso expressly prohibits, in the operating agreement, Pacaso expressly prohibits rentals. And the reason why is because this is a product that's designed for owner occupants. This is for people who want to own and occupy a second home for their own personal use and enjoyment. It's not for people that are looking to, make an investment and generate rental income. And what we found is that most second homeowners who are renting their home out, they're only doing it as a means to an end. It's not because people want to be second homeowners and deal with the parties and the hassle and the wear and tear that renters put on a home. They do it because they're trying to offset their operating costs and their ownership costs. With Pacaso, there's a different way. You can now own a home and not have to rent it out by right-sizing your ownership. Next is what happens if the home is damaged. So obviously for big things that would be covered by insurance, every home is fully insured to its replacement value. And then for damage that would happen by an owner, that owner would have to pay for the damage. So every time an owner checks out, we go through with our local experts. And if there's damage that's been done to the home, that owner pays for it. But the one thing that I'll note on damage is that these are owners. Everybody who buys into a Pacaso has an owner's mindset. They have significant skin in the game. And in most cases, they have significant, not just emotional skin in the game, but financial skin in the game as well. So owners treat homes like owners, and Pacaso owners are owners. Renters treat homes like renters. So forget everything you knew about vacation renters. Those are very different types of personas than Pacaso owners. Next is how does scheduling work? So we have a very innovative scheduling app. We call it Smart Stay. You're looking at a little screen grab of it here. Every owner gets to download the Pacaso app on iOS or Android. Within the app, you'll see this little calendar feature, and it's very easy for owners to block time in their calendar with as little as 2 days notice or as much as 24 months notice. And on the back end, the system has a series of rules and algorithms that distribute the request and time equitably across the ownership group. How does Pacaso make money? We make money in 2 ways. One, we charge a markup on the real estate, and that's a one-time fee of 10%. So if it's $1 million home, we add furniture to the cost, and then we mark it up, and then we divide that by 8, and that's how we come up with the share price. So that cost is paid by the buyer, though, I should note. So the sellers net the same amount. In fact, usually they net more when they pay with Pacaso because we're willing to pay top dollar for great listings. And buyers are happy to absorb a slight premium because we're dramatically reducing the entry cost and the cost of ownership when compared to a whole house. The second way that we make money is we charge a 1% asset management fee. That's an annual fee. And that covers everything that we do to manage the property, from coordinating the vendors to repairing things to paying the bills. Lastly is what about resale? I think I spoke about this before, but I'll touch on a couple other things that I didn't describe, which is when somebody wants to sell, basically the way that it works, the only real restriction is there's a 1-year hold period. And the reason that we introduced that is because we don't want investors buying these Pacasos and trying to speculate on them and flip. So we require people to hold for 1 year. After the 1 year, they just pick their price. And the first thing that happens is the other owners get a notification, and they have a 5-day right to purchase the share at the price that the seller picked. If the other owners don't purchase the share, it then gets listed with our local agent partner, hopefully one or many of you in the future. And then it gets listed on the MLS and distributed to all of your websites and Redfin and Realtor.com and all the others. And it transacts just like a normal home at that point. Chris, do we have any other questions in the thread?
Yeah, we sure do. Before we dive into those questions, you mentioned that we have a couple listings, a couple Pacasos live in Hilton Head Island. You can go to pacaso.com/listings, or you can go to Picasso.com and click on that listings button. You'll see that we have the Whistling Swan and the Starbird that are both live currently in Hilton Head Island right now. Any notes on those, or the ambassador agent we're working with on those, Austin, before we do more Q&A?
Yeah, I mean, they're great homes. So we're working with Dan Prudhomme on both of them. And yeah, they're great. I mean, one's offered at, well, Chris, you could explain more about the homes than me.
Yeah, the Whistling Swan is $489,000 for 1/8 ownership. That's in the Sea Pines, as Austin noted. And then we have the Starbird, which is $294,000 for 1/8 ownership. That's in the Palmetto Dunes area.
Yep.
Okay, let's dig into some questions. There's a lot of questions around how are repairs and maintenance handled? Who handles the repairs and the maintenance? How is that price baked in, etc.?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Picasso handles every detail for the owners, including repairs and maintenance. So as an owner, you don't even have to think about it other than knowing how much of your monthly payment is going to the repair and maintenance allowance. So basically the way that it works is we are accruing a small amount each month for future repair and maintenance items. So if the roof needs to be replaced in 15 years, just using that as an example, we are accruing money for that roof replacement 15 years from now, a little bit each month, so that when the roof needs to be replaced, there's not a big surprise for all the owners. There's already money in the bank account to fund that. So that's all baked into every owner's monthly expense, and every owner's monthly expense is known very transparently. It's displayed in advance, and then it's also available in the owner app. And any cost that's a pass-through, like, you know, a roof repair or utilities or taxes, all of those costs just get passed through to the owners at cost with no markup. We're not making any money on that.
Great. Austin, what happens if one of the owners stops making payments?
Oh, this is a good one. So
it's a common question.
Yeah. So obviously the concept of families owning houses together has been around for a long time. We call that do-it-yourself co-ownership. That by itself is not new or novel, but it's very hard to do it on your own. And one of the biggest challenges associated with do-it-yourself co-ownership, one of the many, I mean, there's several big challenges, but one of them is this notion of joint and several liability. If you were to go get a loan, if you and 4 of your friends were to go buy a house together and get a loan, that loan would have joint and several liability, which means that if one person defaults, the other people in the ownership group are stuck holding the bag when that person defaults. With Picasso, that issue goes away because Picasso guarantees the loan. So we've gone out and we've partnered with leading banks to make financing available at the LLC level, and then we guarantee the loan for the owners. So if one person defaults, Picasso steps in and pays their liabilities, and then we foreclose on their share and find another vetted co-owner to come in and purchase that share.
Great, great. There's questions around it. I think you touched on this earlier, but can they re-rent their days, or is this a vacation rental as well?
No, they are not allowed to re-rent their days, but they are allowed to have guests. So if you own, a lot of our Picasso owners will have family or friends that want to come stay in their Picasso, and that's totally fine. We just have a very easy tool within the app where you can add a registered guest and the guest is able to use your home. But you are not allowed to rent the home out. You're not allowed to go post it on Airbnb or VRBO. I mean, this is designed for owners, not renters. And that's good for the owners. It's also good for the community and the HOAs that these homes are in.
Great, thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. Can you touch on financing again? Is financing available for the shares, and how does that work one more time?
Financing is available. We partner with leading banks to make it available. It's offered at a 50% loan to value, and the rates are between 4 and 4.5%, depending on the market. And it's very easy to and fast to be approved, and we guarantee the loan, as I mentioned before.
Okay, and there's a lot of questions around how do I partner with Picasso and what do we do next? And we'll leave that as the last question, and then you could take us out of here, Austin.
Great. So again, just to recap, we're super excited about the opportunity to partner with each and every one of you. Most importantly, we're motivated by our mission, which is to enrich people's lives. And we know that that's a mission that you all share. Like you're in this business to help people become homeowners as well. And, you know, it's a shame that second homes have been so out of reach. This is a privilege that is desired by many, but only a reality for the top 1%. And together we can change that. We can make this dream possible for many, many more people. So we'd love to work with each of you. And if we can do that, the good news is each of you will make a lot of money as well, which is great. That's the cool thing about this business, is that it's a win-win-win. Good for consumers, good for agents, good for Pacaso, because we're adding value and taking a lot of inefficiency out of the old system, which is very underutilized. The way to do it is go to Pacaso.com. So that's Pacaso. It's pronounced like the artist Pablo Picasso, but spelled a bit differently with an A. So again, Pacaso.com. And from that website, you'll see a link at the top that says agents. On the agent page, you can register to be one of our agent partners. From there, that will kick off a series of things on our end. The first thing that'll happen is you'll receive a package of marketing materials, and then Chris and our team will follow up to support you in any way that you need. So just to wrap this up, I think we're out of time. I just want to thank everybody again. We're incredibly excited about Hilton Head as a market. I want to thank Dan Prudhomme again for the opportunity to be here today. And we look forward to speaking with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.